Well, it's time for fertilizer, I think. This year has been the weirdest year in terms of trying to figure out timing on everything, that I've been really baffled myself as to what's been going on weather-wise and when to apply certain things here in the spring, or when to really get our first sort of heavier application of fertilizer down here before it gets to the summer heat. But the summer heat is here as of today. So today I'm putting down some fertilizer. I'm going to explain what I'm using and sort of the why behind what I'm doing, so you can kind of learn a little bit more about when to apply these things, or generally you can try to get an idea, but it's been difficult. So normally what happens here is, coming out of winter, things look pretty good, and some people put down an application of fertilizer in the spring, but if you did heavy fertilizer in the fall for cool season grass here, then normally you don't need to do that, and you're kind of in a waiting game to figure out when that huge flush of growth is going to happen. So normally the rains come in the spring and the grass is growing like wildfire anyway, and then there's a period of time right after that when you can sort of sense that it's slowing down. Then that's when you want to put on a dose of fertilizer, a little heavier, to get through some of the summer months, and that's really the general thing. But this year has been completely different. So this year, instead of the rains coming in the spring and the grass really growing like crazy, it was dry, the grass was slow, it wasn't reacting too much, also because we had a lot of cold temperatures. Temperatures were up and down, and a lot of actually really cold weather as well. So things got really confused. I felt like things were stunted a lot of the time, and it wasn't looking the way that it normally looks. And still up until this point, I don't feel like everything is the normal way that it should look right now. So as I mentioned, usually you'll notice the huge flush of growth happen, and then things slow down a little bit and you know exactly when to apply. And like all good things in the Midwest here, we're now into our summer temperatures like that. Looking for a high of 92 today. So having said all that, I believe right now is the timing to get this fertilizer down, and I do see some trending of it going back to a bit cooler in the next week and a half. So although it's going to be hot here for the next week, hopefully it will go back to maybe being around 80 for a little while here in June, because anytime that it gets to 90 degrees in June and it stays that way for 3 months, all of you guys down in the south know exactly what that's like. But it's a pretty miserable experience here for cool season lawns if it gets that hot for that stretch of time, because it's a real battle against all of that heat and trying to maintain any sort of good looking cool season grass. May actually go for the Elite spreader today. Alright, so the question pretty naturally becomes, what fertilizer should you put down? So I have a couple things that I want you to think about today. For the most part, if you're just getting into this and you just go to the store and you pick up a bag of whatever's there, this happens to be a just generic sort of fertilizer from Menards. They're something similar to like a Scott's Turf Builder or something in that vein, I guess you'd say. So there's nothing wrong with doing something like that at this point. I used to add my Milorganite just before summer, so if you're using a fertilizer like that, usually right around this time frame works well with that one as well. The problem that I have had with Milorganite over the years is just that it contains a lot of phosphorus, which I don't really need because I have quite a bit in my soil already from my soil testing, and 2, it contains no potassium. So you could definitely add some potassium into the mix in other ways, but I would prefer to have something in the fertilizer that I'm applying if possible, just because potassium will help with your summer stress, and there's a lot of stress going on as far as this heat goes and it being a weird year in general, so I would prefer to have some potassium in there. On this generic bag here, we've got 28% nitrogen, 3% potassium, and 1% iron. So this is something would be totally fine for you to use. It's also slower release. So going into summer here when we make this application, it would be nice if it sort of slow releases more over these months. That way it's feeding the lawn slowly and it's already in a stressful period where we don't really want to be putting tons of fertilizer on it and trying to get it to grow through all this stressful period anyway. This other bag that I have here is something that I wanted to mention as well, because if you did a granular application of your pre-emergent and that had a fertilizer in it, then round 2 of that is coming pretty much right now. So I checked the soil temperatures here the other day and it was at just under 70. I guarantee with all this heat coming that the soil temps are going to start to come up as well. So just keep in mind that if you were putting down your second application of pre-emergent at soil temps of 70 and it happens to have some fertilizer in it, then calculate that in as well. If it's a low amount like this, and I think our application before came out to about 0.3 pounds of nitrogen. Then if you want to add a little more than that, you can supplement with another fertilizer. I'm targeting an application between a half pound and 3/4 of a pound of nitrogen for this, and letting that slow release a little bit more over these summer months. So I'm going to be applying two different things today. The first thing, inside of the fenced area, I'm going to be applying ExGreen, and this is a fertilizer that I've been testing some last year and then again using it now, and I really enjoyed it last year. So a few things that I really enjoy about it are the prill size. So there's actually very small prill size here. For my low cut turf, that works perfectly because it really works itself down to the soil layer and it's not sitting up on top of the grass. So this year, back here, now that I'm cutting slightly lower, I'd like to apply this. And the other thing that I love about it is that the formula is 8-1-8. So you have 8% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, and 8% potassium. So that really boosts that potassium that I need going into the summer stress. So those are a couple things that I really love about it. Also has iron in there. Just a great all-around fertilizer that you can use anywhere. It doesn't have to be on low-cut turf. But for me, I'm going to be applying this today. Now I had about half of a bag left, and I'm going to apply that to 3,500 square feet here. Now doing a quick estimate on where I should be with that will be around a half a pound of nitrogen. Remember that I've said many times before, as far as settings go on your spreader, it'd be much better to walk more and spread more at a lower setting than it would be to set it too high and run out halfway through your lawn. So I'm going to start here probably around a 4, see how that's looking, judge how fast things are coming out, and get this spread across this area evenly. So that was actually very close to right on with that settings. I've got a little bit left, so I'm going to set it down just a touch, and I will go over this in the opposite direction and get the rest of it put out. But otherwise, it does flow so nicely with that small prill size. So basically this area out here is pretty much what I would consider my normal area as far as cutting it at 3 inches right now. Just following my pretty much regular program as far as a few applications a year, general fertilizers, and that's kind of my program back here. So with that, I'm going to be using that Menards regular, like generic fertilizer on this area back here, simply just choosing the bag rate on the back. By the way, really quick tip for you, if you happen to spill fertilizer, which I just did because I was moving my camera and I thought that the hopper was closed, but apparently it was not. I left that sitting on here for, I don't know, not that long actually. And it's about 90 degrees out now, so that black color and the sun, looks like that kind of torched it pretty good. So I'm gonna get some water on this quick and see what happens with it, but little spot, it is what it is. Most people aren't going to be moving cameras when they're fertilizing, but just in case you happen to spill something, just a shot vac can get that picked up. Oh boy. Well, the heat is definitely on now. So speaking of water, you want to make sure that you get some irrigation on this now to water everything in. Now it's the middle of the day by the time I finish these applications, so I'm not going to put any water on it right at this point. But I'll get everything set up to water tonight and get this thing watered in. It hasn't rained here for a couple days as well, so I'll probably go for a heavier dose of water, just get everything good and soaked in there, and this thing should start working a little quicker. Another thing you can do right now is this soil loosener that I do use. You can put that down before you're watering. It's going to help to have that water soak in a bit better. So So if you do have some of this and you're wondering about timing, usually these times when we're getting into our warmer transition of weather is a great time to apply that. Really any time before an irrigation, it only uses 1 ounce per 1,000, so really any time before you use an irrigation you can use some of that stuff. Help the water soak in more efficiently if you want to. And then coming up into summer here, this is a bit of a lull for cool season grass. There's a few things that you can do to try to maintain your color if you are going to keep up with watering. Hopefully we get some rain and you can maintain some of it, but if it does go into more of a dormant state and gets kind of brown, then you can just let it be at that point as well. As long as it's getting maybe 1/4 of an inch of water every couple weeks, just to make sure that the plant doesn't die off, then everything will be fine once cooler weather comes and more rain comes in our fall season. I'll talk about some of that stuff as we get more into the summer season here. And also, if you haven't seen my irrigation video that I just completed on sprinklers and a DIY system that I use, be sure to check that out. So thanks so much for watching today. We'll see you next time.